What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the College Loop Podcast. I am your boy, the Tank. That is Dylan Larck, and this is episode 38, or the Legatron episode for Daniel Carlson.
Shout
And
out our boy.
shout out our boy. And also, I am again, and for what has been a week now, joined again with Harrison Tarr. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, and Dylan, I know that we're down Daniel tonight, who was working his tail end off over at WEGL 91.1, and an organization that you and I hold very near and dear to our hearts. So I'm glad he's able to run point there. Also, before we get into things, I just wanted to give you guys a quick shout out. For those of you listening at home, this industry is consistently inconsistent. It is rapid fire. Dylan held his own and did an incredible job on Sunday. Daniel and Dylan did a great job with our pregame analysis of Houston. And like I said, Dylan, a phenomenal job with recapping that game. I had some personal matters to tend to, and I wanted to put it out there and let everybody know that it's pretty immeasurable how much I appreciate these guys for having my back. And this is a special group, and we certainly do everything we can to make sure we bring you guys up to the minute and we don't miss episodes. And honestly, it means the world to me, especially with how jam-packed this industry is. So Dylan, thank you very much. And Daniel, I know he's not here, but I owe him a huge thank you too. I appreciate the heck out of you guys.
And of course, thank y'all for listening to that show. I thought it was going to come out bad, but y'all seem to have loved it. So that's good. So we're just going to go right in with women's basketball, who played last night as this is coming out. An absolute heartbreaker of a game. Auburn loses 56-55. Marshawn Bostic puts up 23 points. Would have been 25 points, but she got called for a charge in the last 5 seconds of the game, and that ended the season. But still a very solid season for women's basketball, and solid is me undermining it, really, because it took 2 seasons for Auburn to go from the 14th team in the SEC out of 14 to an NIT second round team, which
that could have been a third round team.
Could have been a third round team. You're just 2 points short of it, and that hurts. You got to feel for that entire team. You get in the NIT, you lose by a point. It hurts.
I mean, when you just look back at the box, I mean, the difference maker is, when do you ever see, honestly, Scott Grayson held to nothing? When do you ever see that happen? And the answer is not often. And after a great game from Jacayla on Friday, Jacayla Johnson, quiet. Sanaya, quiet. And let's be honest, this team's just not that deep right now. They had some roster pieces missing and not with the team. Ton of adversity. And I told you when we were talking about this game a little bit on Sunday night that looking at this game, it's going to be hard alone to keep them in it, just because they're only rotating in. What was that? 8 girls. I mean, you're not even playing with a full strength roster, and you're going toe to toe with the team that a year ago, let's call a spade, would have blown the doors off you. And I mean, it just really speaks to how bad this team wanted to be there, and the immeasurable amount of heart. I know that that's kind of one of those feel good stats, and it sounds like I'm sunshine pumping, but I mean, I think that everyone needs to take a step back for a second and look and say, wow, the ground made this year and the foundation built this year is something special, man. And we know there's going to be a shakeup in roster coming into the 23-24 campaign. I think it's for the best. And as that information becomes more available, we will definitely discuss that and keep you guys updated up to the minute, like we always try to do the best we possibly can. Man, I'm tempted to change my grade to an A+ on the year. This game should have been a win, like you said. The controversial call there at the end. I mean, I thought it's kind of an iffy charge on Marshawn, and that really is one of those that could have gone either way. You never leave the game in the hands of an official. I get that. We preach that all the time. If it's a blocking foul, I'd like to think Marshawn probably gets to the line, probably gets it down to the line, but that's neither here nor there. You're theoretically returning Aisha Coulibaly, Marshawn Bostic. Sydney Shaw has been on fire in the WNIT. Carissa Richardson, she's going to be right there. Yeah, you know what Jacayla Johnson can do. Sanaya Wells has an extra year of eligibility if she wants it. It's all a matter of, what does this team look like next year? There's a couple of players I think you and I probably figure are probably out the door. But it's part of the process, right? I mean, nothing ever goes super smoothly, especially in the world of the transfer portal. But Dylan, I was pleasantly surprised with the way that this team rallied back, and you like to think that the way that they're playing teams closer, also by transitive property, Auburn's got to be a top 4 team in the country, because Ole Miss wound up upsetting number 1 Stanford. in women's bracketology, which was remarkable. That's a really well coached team too, by the way.
Yeah.
Ole Miss was a very surprisingly good team this year, and Auburn plays in the toughest conference. Man, I know that people get on to us about our quote unquote love affair with the SEC. I'll go ahead and say it, folks. Barring the Olympic sports, like being track and field and volleyball and things of that nature,
Rowing.
rowing. I mean, even volleyball, the SEC is top tier, but the SEC is the deepest conference in every sport, and you can quote me on that, Dylan. I don't really care. I'll stand by that. There's a reason that the SEC is the premier brand in intercollegiate athletics, and this Auburn team held their own this year, and comparatively, for sure, this could be. I don't know if it's a NCAA tournament appearance next year, but it's definitely a seeded in WNIT Locke, and that's fine. That's completely okay. Don't be surprised if they wind up knocking off a couple of teams they shouldn't knock off next year too, Dylan. So a lot of good things coming from the women's hardwood. You got to talk men's basketball. You and Daniel got to talk men's basketball. You know, it hurt me the most to not be able to hop on here and talk Auburn hoops, both men's and women's this weekend, especially after a big WNIT home win over Tulane. I was upset. I wanted to look back for a second here, Dylan, and let's talk men's basketball. You finished the season at 21-13, and I know that there's a lot of people that think there was a lot left to be desired from this team, and quite frankly, they should have beaten Houston. That's really kind of, I'm going to stick by that, and I think you wouldn't disagree.
I would not. You miss 17 free throws, you lose the game by 17. Simple as that.
That might have been the best example of, to quote Jacob Goins on this team one more time, this team just kind of was what it was. And missing its free throws was kind of the brand. And that 81-64 scoreline is just not indicative of what this team was capable of. Houston came out of the second half ready to win this game, and Auburn came out of that half just flat. They couldn't buy a bucket. But from a bigger picture, you said it on the Sunday show, and I think you put it best, Dylan. A lot of you Auburn fans that listen to this lived through the Tony Barbie years at Auburn. And to quote Dylan Larck on Sunday's show, if your floor under Bruce Pearl is losing in the second round of the NCAA tournament, that is something you take every single time. And I know that we're going to look back and this team's going to slip between the cracks. It unfortunately is going to slip between the cracks because this team had the makings of what really could have been a very, very special group. And I think they could be special in 23-24. I really sincerely do, especially with the addition of, as you mentioned, Aiden Holloway. But like I said, a lot of you guys lived through the Tony Barbie era. And from an outsider perspective at that point in time, and as a kid who, full disclosure, I grew up a Georgia Tech fan, never minded Auburn, cheered for Auburn against Georgia for sure. And obviously everybody cheered for Auburn against Alabama. So I grew up watching a good bit of Auburn games. Watching Auburn basketball as a kid was like, oh my gosh, like why is this on the TV? Like this is a joke. And Auburn was the laughing stock of the SEC for an extended period of time. And you're kind of seeing that there's some parallels in women's hoops, by the way, just as a little side note. But Bruce Pearl's accomplishments at Auburn should never be overshadowed by the fact that this team didn't go according to what we consider to be the script ahead of the season. And I know that feels eerily similar to the team just a year ago, the 21-22 team. But I don't want that to get lost in the sauce, like I always say, because I mean, the way that this group rallied coming down the stretch, I mean, you stumbled, and then you just didn't give up, and you found yourself in games. I mean, they didn't go the way you wanted, but let's take out that Kentucky game. You're right there at the Vanderbilt loss. You got right against Ole Miss. You were right there in overtime against the number one team in the country and the presumptive favorite to win the national title now, Alabama. In March, you lose that game in overtime. You take down a very, very good Tennessee team that's still dancing right now as we speak to close out the season. And then you were right there in the Arkansas game. It's you're missing that, I guess, for lack of a better term, as my mom always says, that little bit of elbow grease. And I think his name's Aiden Holloway. And yeah, sure, you're missing Zeb Jasper next year, and theoretically Alan Flanagan and Jalen Williams and a lot of pieces to talk about, and we'll monitor as that situation progresses. I think that we have a good idea of who'll be here, who won't. But all in all, I mean, I still got to give this team, I think, a B plus.
Yeah, I think that's a very solid grade to give them. Honestly, had you graded the season prior to the SEC tournament, Auburn's looking closer to the C range, but the NCAA tournament really turning this team around. And getting to the second round, I don't know what the presumptive prediction was by mass media and whatnot before the season, but you lose Jabari Smith, you
And
lose
Walker Kessler.
Walker Kessler, getting there. And did everyone expect this team to be a Final Four team again? Did everyone expect this team to be an Elite Eight team after losing the two best players who Auburn had the same ending last season?
I think that a lot of it's the Sweet 16. I don't think that's becoming kind of the standard idea, but that's a little bit of a ridiculous perspective. Look at Princeton. Look at teams like Furman. Look at teams like Fairleigh Dickinson. Hashtag represent New Jersey. But it's the tournament, man, right?
Yeah. I think a B plus is probably where I would rank them. Maybe closer to the B range, just an average B. B plus seems too close to an A for me.
Sure.
So,
well, it would have been a B flat or a B minus for me if Trey Donaldson wouldn't have done what he did coming down the stretch, and you see some promise going into 23.
Well, here's the problem with Trey Donaldson. He didn't play in the second half.
I know.
That was my whole thing with the Sunday episode was where in the world.
I listened. Yeah. That's a puzzling piece, but Trey, fun spin zone here. That's a guy we're going to get talked about a lot this offseason, because I'll go ahead and preview it now and plant this bug in your ear. There are guard minutes to be shared. And I think Trey Donaldson fits in that mold in a way that maybe Wendell Green Jr. stands are probably not going to love. And I would be curious. I'm going to be very curious to see how this team looks going into 23-24. I think they're going to be better. And I think that there's a lot of room for growth. Thoughts?
I believe you are right. I think Trey Donaldson also offers the same kind of defensive ability that Zep Jasper does. He plays the same kind of defense. He gets in your face. He annoys you. That's just how he plays. And get him a little bit more consistent from the three. Get this NCAA tournament shooting that get that confidence that he's been having.
He also showed that immeasurable kind of dog in you, and at the right time of the year, where you put the ball in his hands in a big moment and he just makes things happen.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to see what that looks like in 2023, 2024. Another team that a lot of people are very interested to see in 23 in the inaugural year of head coach Hugh Freeze, Auburn football program. I'm sorry. I completely missed where this has been added to the rundown. Dylan, I'll backtrack for a second here. You mentioned that you wanted to do superlatives.
Yeah.
Here on the college loop. Let's do real quick. We'll just do a 1, 2, 3, bam, bam, bam. And we'll talk MVP, best newcomer, MIP,
most improved.
Thank you. Dude, I'm telling you, I'm in a funk. For those of you curious, I got back from Jersey at 3:30 this morning, and that's just kind of as we're filming this. So I'm just in a funk. But let's go ahead and start. Dylan, your season MVP.
Janai Broome.
All right, yeah, I'll just go ahead and unanimously you can go and make that graphic, and I would agree.
And the best newcomer, Janai Broome.
Yes. Okay. Great. I'm glad we're in unison here. Most improved.
Katie Johnson.
Whoa. Okay, I need you to talk to me for a second about that.
Well, I think the last month has really been the best Katie Johnson we've seen at Auburn in general. You can go most improved player of the season and most improved player from last year as well. I think Katie Johnson offered valuable minutes, and we saw the best of Alan Flanagan, but that really dipped off.
You also saw the worst of Alan Flanagan.
You saw the worst of Katie Johnson early on in the season, but throughout the season, you got to see the best of Katie Johnson.
I've got kind of a different pick for most improved player. I'm going to go Wendell Green Jr. And let me just quickly talk through this. I thought his shot selection got much better this year. his facilitating abilities. I mean, he's probably the best passer in the SEC, man. I'm just not going to lie to you. And that's such an immeasurable stat, and his ability to get his guys open. I was very, very impressed by Wendell's progression year to year, and in his senior year academically and third year with the program next year, presumptively. I would expect a continued progression, because I know that he kind of took a backseat in terms of, like, he quietly scored this year instead of putting up flashy numbers.
Yeah,
And that's okay. I'm looking for him to progress in terms of not just shot selection next year, decision making about going to the basket, which part of that's getting in the weight room, right? But another bit of that is having some faith in his guys that he can kick it out and doesn't always have to kind of do it himself. But a lot of times this year he was asked to. And that's going to get lost in the sauce because people are still harping on him for that SEC tournament buzzer beater, which, by the way, that shot was fine. That shot was fine. I have no problem with that. I'm going to stand by that until I die. Other little tidbit of basketball news. I'm actually glad you reeled me back in. Zep Jasper announced a team war ready in the basketball tournament. That is literally the name, the basketball tournament. It's like, I think the first time we've ever had an Auburn player immediately after concluding his career at Auburn, his tenure at Auburn, be named to team war ready. That's potentially very good for his G League stock if a G League organization is interested in developing him and seeing if he's a potential fit at the next level, which I don't necessarily know that that's in the cards, but man, that team's going to be a ton of fun. I mean, you've got, did you know that you needed Zep Jasper feeding the ball to D'Angelo Purifoy?
That's a fever dream to Auburn fans. Is just
Or
that,
Malik Dunbar.
yeah. My thing with Zep in the G League or the NBA in general, he's older than like half the league right now.
Yeah, I know. That was just a side tidbit, and he's not a scorer. So there's a lot there, but who knows? Who's to say? I mean,
1985, he would have been a first rounder.
Right.
But
Lockdown defender.
League has changed. He definitely plays that 90s brand of basketball.
Sure. Bully ball. The bad boy Pistons, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Now we're going to pivot over to football real quick, Dylan. And I appreciate you for reeling me back in. Like I said, my head's been in a funk. So I'm glad that you're there. Auburn Football Pro Day today, as this show's coming out. Dylan, who are we looking forward to be able to boost some stock and really impress some people that could fly under the radar and wind up getting signed? I think John Samuel Schenker probably comes to my mind.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Just gonna. So me and Lance Dahl on the Auburn Daily Show yesterday talked about the pro day a lot, and I think it was unanimous in me and Lance both agreeing. Schenker, you have your 5 draftable guys in Hank, Derek, Colby, Owen, and Iku. Then you have your guys who didn't get invited to the combine. You got your Shedrick Jackson, who I've never been the highest on, so I don't really see him as a draft prospect. But Schenker, the question mark on him. He doesn't have the speed that you want out of a tight end, but he does have very reliable hands, and he's a decent blocker.
And he's a good route runner.
The only thing bad about him is his speed, but maybe sneaky speed. And I mean, you can slim him down a little bit, and he's fine. Schenker's probably my pick. I could see one of these O linemen kind of sneaking into one. Killian Zier didn't have the best career at Auburn, but he's a big boy lineman, and NFL coaches love linemen that are 6'7" and above.
And one of those guys you look at and you're like, I can fix him. Him. You know what I mean? Yeah, no, I'm it's funny because honestly, full disclosure, I've been trying to sleep and work and sleep today. So I have not listened to the Auburn Daily Show yet. It's really funny that you guys mentioned Schenker, and that was the first one to come to my mind. Shedrick Jackson could impress people with his physical dimensions in terms of how he runs his shuttle, his 40 and bench press. He's a strong dude, built well, just not the best hands, and really didn't get a lot of targets at Auburn. But who knows? There may be an NFL practice team that says, hey, we could put him on the practice squad and see what happens.
I mean, you bulk him up. Tight end. He's a good blocker. Enough blocker to where you can do that.
So definitely an opportunity for a lot of guys there, and something that we will definitely have an in-depth breakdown on the Thursday show as we talk to. Hopefully we'll have an interview on that show. Should be back to full strength here on the College Loop by this Thursday. Cam Newton will be in the house, so that's always fun. It's always a vibe when Cam is back in town.
Might be a workout for Cam. I think he's trying to get back in the NFL. So he'll probably be the one throwing the passes, throwing deep balls. You know what? It's good. It's good for like media attention and all that stuff too.
If nothing else, it's fun, right?
Exactly. I'm sad I didn't get to go. Dude's basically my hero.
Dylan, I've got a question for you as we move on from Pro Day. And here's the overarching question that you and I are getting all the time and having small talk conversations, whether that be over dinner, over grabbing a beer with buddies, and things like that. And this is definitely a good, conversation for the Xbox party chat. Can Hugh Freeze win a championship at Auburn? And I'm getting this a lot. A lot of people asking me, do you think Hugh Freeze can lead Auburn to the promised land? Is there a world where Hugh Freeze is set up for success at Auburn to the point where you think that Auburn could renew itself on the national stage? I want to get your thoughts. I've definitely formulated an opinion because I've been asked this a lot. And I was curious where your headspace is at, and I'm sure this is going to wind up being the clickbait for the episode, and that's fine. But your thoughts.
So the question is, can Hugh Freeze win a championship while he's at Auburn? And my answer is yes. Yes, he can. He's a great recruiter. We've seen that. He completely changes the outlook of Auburn recruiting. We saw it this past weekend where he went absolutely ballistic and had several highly touted players across the next 3 years at Auburn. And you had a 5-star who said that his visit was so good, he's already looking forward to the next one. That's the kind of outlook you want out of recruits. And the scheme that he has is taken down giants. He has taken mediocre Ole Miss teams and beat number 1 Bama teams. That's what you want. He just has never had the facilities of a big budget program to do that. And I think now he does have that with Auburn. You just get him a quarterback who can develop well, and there you go. That's all you need nowadays is a very good quarterback.
I'm not going to disagree with you, Dylan. I think that something that Hugh Freeze has brought to the table is a very clear plan in the recruiting trail. You've got your quarterback of the future, Walker White, in the class of 2024, a guy that a lot of people are excited and who's pretty much been, if you're not naming coaches, been the lead recruiter for that 24 class. And that's what you want. You want a guy that believes in Auburn, believes in the scheme, and believes in Hugh Freeze. There's never been a better time than now. The college football playoffs expanding to 12 teams. It's going to open some doors for a theoretical Cinderella story. I know that the people are going to talk about how top heavy that is, whatever. The table is set correctly for Hugh Freeze to be very, very successful at Auburn. At the bare minimum, I do think he'll make the college football playoff more than once under the expansion. But like we mentioned, his early onset efforts on the recruiting trail have been nothing short of remarkable. And X's and O's, I think he's fine. I don't think he's the best coach in the world. I'm just going to be candid about that. I don't think he's the most brilliant offensive minded coach in the world. I think he's very talented, and I think he's got the right guys in the right places. Philip Montgomery's impressed me all the way through, and you've got those pieces, the Cadillac Williams, the Zach Etheridges, the Trevon Reeds on the recruiting front. He's kept the right pieces, brought in, I think, pieces that are going to be very beneficial to Auburn, and he just kind of makes the most out of what he's got. So I would not be surprised, first off, for Auburn to get a decent bowl bid in 23, but more importantly, I think that to answer the question here, what I always tell people is Hugh Freeze absolutely can win a championship at Auburn. Just like anywhere else, all the stars have to align in any championship run for any sport at any level. But the potential is there, the resources is there, and the recruiting is back to a level unseen, barring the early Malzahn era, to mid Malzahn era. So my final answer is absolutely capable. I can't guarantee a championship for Auburn because none of us can. We don't have a crystal ball. And I don't quite, to be candid, I don't think Georgia's done, and I don't think Alabama's done.
Well, the question is, can he, not will he?
Right. Sure. Yeah. He's absolutely capable. He can. I don't know if he will. So that's kind of my final answer. Another team competing to get their name written in the history books on the national stage. Let's talk about Auburn Gymnastics for a second here. After finishing 5th in the SEC championships this past weekend, mom and dad had a great time. Mom was amazed. Awesome. She called me and she's like, that Trinity Thomas girl is pretty good. I was like, yeah, Florida's kind of disgusting. So there's that. They're headed out to regionals out at, as you said, UCLA and in Los Angeles, and they'll begin against BYU and Boise State. That's a pretty good draw.
Yes.
That's on March 29th. That's favorable to Auburn. I think Suni Lee should be healthy by then. That's from my understanding when she's got another 9 days to rest up. So at that point, she'll have almost 30 days of rest. And at that point, you're just kind of banking on not suffering any rust and having to knock any rust off. Auburn has the right pieces. Shout out Cassie Stevens. Hell of a performance at the SEC championships. And you never count this team out when they get to floor. If they're within striking distance and they're heading to floor, I like their chances to win it under any scenario, Dylan.
Yeah, if he comes down to it, Auburn has to have a perfect 10 come out, and then out walks Darian Goborn, and God save the Queen
That's
when
right.
Auburn needs it most. So you hope Suni Lee's healthy. Cassie Stevens is performing her best, as always. Did not score anything under a 9.9 at the SEC Championship. That's why she was a co-SEC champion for vault. She hit a 9.95, which
Yeah, I couldn't find the .05.
yeah, where is it?
Yeah,
Where'd it go? Where did you come from, Cotton Eye Joe?
I couldn't find it either. I'm going to go a little out of order here, Dylan. I know we're going to talk softball, but while we're on the topic of a team that needs to get healthy, let's talk baseball for a second here. Auburn got swept by Arkansas this past weekend. You did a great job recapping that on the Sunday show. They are going to take on South Alabama. I believe that's Wednesday, correct?
That is today as the show comes out
Today
in
as the show comes
Riverwalk
out.
Stadium in Montgomery, Alabama.
Right.
So catch
Fun
the Auburn
matchup.
Tigers in the Biscuit Stadium.
That's right. Fun matchup at Riverwalk in great ballpark. Auburn, I think, was suffering a little bit from that midweek against Georgia Tech last week. They're having to throw so many arms. And I mean, let's be honest for a second. Arkansas is Arkansas. They're good for a reason, and they're so nationally notarized for a reason. Jogo's got to get healthy, man. You got to get him back in the rotation. It's not going to be a midweek opportunity to preview the South Alabama game. They gave Alabama hell for about 7 innings, which means they can give Auburn hell for about 9 innings at the state of where this team's at right now. Do I think they can be better? Absolutely. But their arms have to be healthy. I would think this has got to be a split game effort between Tommy Vale, Connor Copeland, and then a combination of 6 guys from the bullpen. I think it's got to be a bullpen game, and you've got to get out there and put in good reps. South Alabama will give you fits. They will put the ball in play. They will test your defense. And if you're not 100% healthy, like Auburn is, you really could find yourself in some early trouble. So something to keep an eye on tonight's matchup with South Alabama on the baseball diamond. Another matchup I'm going to let Dylan preview because he was able to watch a good bit this weekend. Softball had a rough time in Oklahoma City, which we kind of figured was going to happen. What in the world has to go right in order for Auburn to get back on track, and they've got to, against Missouri this weekend, and an opponent that I don't think can compete with them?
Well, it starts. I don't want to say it starts with the pitching staff, but kind of maybe does. Auburn gave up, to do some quick maths here, they gave up 2 runs, 6 runs, 14 runs to the number 1 team in the country, and then, of course, 7 runs. So quick maths, that's 21, 27, 29, 31 runs in a weekend. Just got to get right, get out of your own head. That's all you got to do. The pitching staff is fine. They're all very good pitchers. They're all really great pitchers. They just got to get right back in their own head. The batting has to get more consistent. You have Nelia Peralta, who is hitting bombs off the first pitch, but after that, everyone's kind of struggling to hit. It happens. You hit a rough stretch from time to time in these sports, and Auburn just kind of hit one. I think something went wrong when they lost the series to Georgia. They just got in their own heads. Then
Lost of confidence.
Lost confidence. And you have to turn around and play the number 1 team in the country, and you kind of just beat yourself up, and you lost to Northwestern. You only lost by 1 run each game. Walk off in the 7th hurts. It just happens. You can't stop it. And then you have to turn around after you get walked off. 2 hours later, you have to look at the number 1 team in the country, and then that it shows. A lot of confidence shows whenever you lose 14-0. It's not much you can really say about it except get out of your own head, take a breath. This team is still good. I still believe in this team. You just got to get some confidence back, and they have a full week to do that.
Absolutely, Dylan, could not agree more. And we'll have a pretty big breakdown of what that looks like this weekend on the Thursday show. For now, that's all we've got on the Tuesday installment of the College Loop. For those of you participating in the bracket challenge, big shout out to Michael Ellison, Trace Kruger, and whoever named their bracket the College Loop. We love you, first off. That's hilarious. All 3 in first place with 46 points, and it looks like the College Loop and Michael Ellison both have 92 points remaining. We've got a couple of brackets with over 100 points still remaining, so shout out to you guys. Y'all are really, really kicking butt and taking names, and we're really excited to be able to give away an awesome Auburn hat and 4 tickets to 8A. So we'll be monitoring that and giving you guys updates after the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 this weekend. We'll see who's still dancing, who's still standing. I've effectively taken myself out of position, but We'll monitor that as that goes forward, and we'll pretend like my bracket never happened. I'm Harrison Tarr, by Harrison Tarr on Twitter. You can check out all my written work on the Auburn Daily. You can listen to more of my podcasting work every Wednesday and Friday on the Auburn Daily Show. You can also catch me every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday right here on the College Loop that Dylan Larck is about to tell you all about. Dylan, been a ton of fun. Happy to be back, man.
No problem. Also go follow Daniel Locke on Twitter at Daniel J. Locke. Catch me on the Auburn Daily Show every Monday and Wednesday. Monday with Lance Daw, Wednesday with Harrison Tarr. Also follow the College Loop literally everywhere. That is Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music. You also got YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. But sadly, no MySpace just yet. Make sure to go follow me at your boy the Tank on Twitter. That is at YABOY the Tank. And with all that being said, the College Loop Podcast.
Like, subscribe, ring the bell.